Life doesn't move in straight lines. It twists, turns, and surprises us along the way. On Better Things Ahead, we talk with people who have walked those winding paths. Each story reminds us of the lessons, hope, and promise of better things ahead.
Welcome in. My name is Matt Cloyd, and today we're going to be discussing better finances. With me is our senior pastor, Michael Estes, and our special guest this week is Tim Blocker, our stewardship ministry director here at Ridgecrest. So glad to have you this week.
I would like to say I'm glad to be here. I guess I am.
Yeah, this is one of your favorite things to do. Anytime you can get on a podcast or out in front of people, he just wants a
microphone in front of him.
Yeah, that's right.
Mics and cameras are my friends.
Yeah, that's right. And so this week, as we're kind of continuing to work through our New Year series and talk about idea of resolutions and things. We talked about that a couple weeks ago, about how to actually, not really about a resolution, it's about making small changes, figuring out how to make those small changes that are sustainable. And so that's kind of where we've been. We've talked about several different things. And so this week we wanted to bring an expert in the field of finances in and kind of talk through this idea and figure out what biblical stewardship looks like. Maybe even kind of talk about your role here at the church and kind of how that crosses over a little bit. But most importantly, we're for a listener, we want to help someone who may be in that spot where they feel they're in a tight spot as far as finances or want to be better stewards of their resources, whatever that might look like. So again, thanks for being here. So to start, Tim, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do here at Ridgecrest?
So my title is stewardship director. I feel like a big part of that includes making good decisions related to our building, good decisions related to our activities, good decisions related to how we spend our funds, and encouraging our congregation to participate by being good stewards for their resources from a financial standpoint, and also from a just using whatever their talents are to steward God's resources here. We have over the years, we have taught Crown Financial, we've taught Dave Ramsey's class, and I tend to, as we see those, a lot of times the people who come to those are people who are already, have made the decision, which is a great step, but a lot of the people who need it are hesitant to come, for whatever reason. And I will say, a lot of times, you can just see in our marriages and our families that finances a lot of times are a major cause of problems within families. I also see that sometimes, most of the times when I taught those classes, I would say that anybody and everybody is welcome, but from a marriage standpoint, I really heavily encourage that both partners come, because one of the worst things that can happen is to have one person really on board with whatever biblical stewardship looks like and the other one not be on board, and it causes more tension. So I think, a part of what we want to do, one of the quotes from Crown Financial is they had gone through and there's over 2,350 verses in the Bible that relate to finances or your possessions or giving, which if you equate that out is almost one of the main things that Jesus spoke about. And I think one of the main reasons he did that was because he knew that is going to be one of our points of contention in our life. Probably one of the main things that tries to take away his time and his glory. We spend our time worrying about finances, worrying about when are we going to be able to retire, worrying about when are we going to be able to, get the kids through college, how are we going to get them wherever which again, planning is a big part of financial stewardship. But many times the biggest issue we have in today's society, and especially here in Madison, we're very affluent, but we try to keep up with the Joneses, and we're not content. I mean, I think the Bible is one of the main things the Bible teaches is be content in all we have, being content in every situation. And most of the time you'll see that biblical financial problems come in when you get the cart ahead of the horse on those. You know, we feel like we want to buy things today that we can't afford, but we just like the Joneses have it, so I'm going to get it.
Yeah.
So I think that one of the main things that we need to do is just to be as a church body and as a believers is to support each other and to realize that you know, we need to be held within a financial guard of ourselves to make sure that we don't get ahead of ourselves there. And I think, again, one of the main reasons that God speaks about this and the giving is because, you know, we preach the tithe, and we've heard people talk about the tithe. Oh, that's Old Testament versus New Testament. Mm-hmm. I've always stressed it to me, take anything in the Old Testament and look at it and see, is there anything that Jesus, after he came and fulfilled the law, he said, I did come to fulfill the law.
Yep.
I didn't replace it. And anything within there, he lifted the bar on all those situations. And I think it's the same way in giving, is that he expects more from us. You know, he expects us to continue to give back. And the reason I think he asks us to do that is it puts him back in place in our lives, just to say, I already own it. I don't need your money. He doesn't need our finances, but our finances very easily become first in our lives or move up the list in our lives and become before God. And when we start putting that before him, obviously things start kicking in and having problems.
Yeah, so I have pastorally, I have a question that kind of follows up. So you mentioned the passage Jesus talks about being worried. And the things that he mentions in that passage is what are we going to eat, what are we going to drink, what are we going to wear, those sorts of things. Those are all really material things, like things that we have to spend money on, things that require our financial, you know, attention. And so, like, my question related to that, so like you mentioned, sometimes we get the cart before the horse. Sometimes we buy things we can't afford. One of the things in our world that seems to be the case, seems to be apparently a problem, but also seems to be kind of a necessary thing at times. How would you counsel young couples, young families, young individuals on the idea of debt? And like, what are things that are acceptable to take debt for, and what are things that you would just point out and say that you should never have debt in this area?
Sure. Well, probably the main thing would be a home. You know, it makes sense many times to buy a home. Again, I don't know how we got to where we are in our world today. I mean, I grew up, and my brother and I, and probably many of you, you know, shared a room with your siblings or whatever. Now it's like I have to have an individual room and then rooms for somebody else to come in. So I think the main thing is to realize that you again, a budget is the most important thing you need to do. If you take a budget, there's any place online, you can go to Crown, you can go to Dave Ramsey, you can go anywhere and get a budget, but make sure you get a biblical budget, because to me, the very first thing you put up there is you put your tithe at the front. People don't tithe because they get their budget to the bottom and there's nothing left at the bottom. But from a debt standpoint, you know, vehicles, most people can't just go and afford to purchase a car, but you don't have to have, you know, I've done it. You know, you're like, oh, I need new tires and I need window and I need whatever. I might as well just go trade in and get a new car. Well, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
That being said, there are people who have jobs, the people who are financially stable, that trading cars is not a problem. There's no, I think scripturally, you know, God wants to bless us. He wants us to have great things. But again, many times we let those things come before. We're getting those things for others because we want a status, or we want to make sure somebody knows. So to me, debt comes into play when you haven't planned. You know, most of the time, if you're going to have debt, you need to plan for debt. You know, there's always unexpected things that come up.
Yep.
But you know, you purchase insurance to cover some of those unexpected things. But you'll see the majority of the time, the reason we get ourselves in trouble is because we buy too much of a house, or we buy the you know,
Too much car.
Too much car. We have to have the, you know. I rolled the window down one time when I was growing up. The kids don't even know what that is, but you don't have to have the, you know, you can play your Bluetooth through your phone on your car without having to have the Bose speakers or whatever. You know, again, I be clear, there's nothing wrong with those things, and it's a matter of making sure that those things fit within where you are.
Yeah.
The main thing to me with debt is, and again, we're not political because this is not Republican, Democrat, or whatever. Our country has shown us what debt does to us.
Yeah.
You know, we're just out of control, and that is a prime example of spending money we don't have.
Right.
You know, and it snowballs on you really quick. You know, Dave Ramsey teaches the debt snowball for reducing your debt. You know, take your smallest and pay it off. There's lots of ways that you can do that, but the main thing is I think the two biggest things is, one is to sit down with your spouse if you're married, do a budget and plan for debt, and figure out where that works into your budget.
Yeah. Yeah. I one more question related to debt for younger people who are listening and like going to college right now, or parents who are thinking about sending their kids to college. How did they handle? How would you encourage or counsel them to handle debt when it comes to education? Because it's hard to go to school without acquiring at least some debt. It's possible. Like around here, one of the things that I encouraged a bunch of my students when I was teaching, if they had a 20 or better on the ACT, to go to Holmes for a couple of years because you could go for free. You know, like there are ways to avoid debt, but it's kind of complicated when it comes to higher education.
Sure, and again, I think that comes back to the very beginning of planning from the get go. There's impact. There's a lot of options for people to help pay for that, and then again, I think honest conversations with our children and ourselves about where our kids are, because again, we as parents always want more, and that we want the best for our kids. We want whatever for their lives. We want them to have more than we ever had.
Yeah.
But again, making those decisions based on, one is, what does your child's career look like? You know, it doesn't make sense to go to
a four-year school.
Go to a four-year school to get a business degree if you don't have a plan. You know, if you have a plan that
Right.
I'm taking over this business, or again, I'm not saying a business degree is bad, but I'm saying there's a lot of people that's not the avenue they really need to be going down. And I think we have seen a lot of change in the last maybe couple of years of emphasis on trade schools. You know, man, how heating, air, and plumbing. You know, welding, all these items are out there for a lot of people that could be the avenue they need to be going. And I think we have put a stigma on our kids, or a pressure on them for the past 15, 20 years that, hey, you got to have a college education if you ever want to be anything.
Yeah.
And again, I'm off tangent probably there, but I'm like,
I think it's related.
It's to make sure that you're spending your money for a return on your investment, because I mean, again, it doesn't make sense to do those things sometimes when you know, there's some kids that just aren't made for college. They say, I don't want to go. I'm not interested in it, and you know, you just go through and build up debt for. So I think again, it comes back to a budget and planning, and really, man, these impact programs and the college savings accounts and those kind of things make sense when you do it when your kid's young, because those items when you do those when they're young. If they decide not to go, the money's still yours. You can use it for something else. You just don't get some of the tax benefits of it. But again, it comes to I don't know. Dave says to live like nobody else today, so I can live like nobody else tomorrow. Or I think I messed that one up.
That sounds
however he
about
says it. But the problem is we're always just living in the moment, spending in the moment, and not worrying about what comes on. Because again, when you have a child in elementary school, you better be planning for them to be in college pretty soon, because as you know, it gets here well before you ever expect it to. And that's just a matter of planning for those things ahead of time.
Yep.
So, thinking of someone who maybe, they're wanting to improve, maybe they're in a place where they're struggling. You mentioned budget kind of being a key aspect of that. What would you say to someone who maybe they've never done a budget before, they're starting to do it, starting to kind of figure it out, get everything kind of lined up, and as they do that, they realize, based on the budget they've developed and what they believe they need, and or even existing finances, more is going out than is coming in. How would you kind of walk someone through restructuring or identifying what to cut, or maybe they've become overextended with debt, or whatever might be the case? What would you kind of do to help them take that initial step? Because I know, like Dave Ramsey has his baby steps and stuff like that, but sometimes, and of course, this kind of gets into some other things. We've as a church, we work with people coming in for benevolence, and a lot of times they're upside down, and it's like, I don't know how to fix that. And so I know that's the extreme, but I'm more talking about someone just in general who, what kind of advice would you give them to help take those initial steps of getting where they need to be?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is let's complete your budget, figure out where you're at, and then also realize that you didn't get in this overnight. You're not going to get out of it overnight.
Yeah.
So one is you didn't get in it because you didn't have patience to wait on what you should have been waiting on, which is also going to be a hard part, because you're probably not going to be patient of wanting to get out of it as well. Yeah. But the time value is the biggest issue. Is you just got to realize that it may have taken you 10 years to get in it. It may take you 5 to 10 years to get out of it. And the biggest problem is pride. The deal is, that person may need to go sell a Lexus and go buy a used whatever for a period of time to get through this situation. And unfortunately, most of the time they're not willing to do it because they look at it as, I'm a failure. And it's not about being a failure. It's about developing a plan to get out of it. Maybe I need to downsize my house for a temporary time period, or whatever. Because again, the reason we got into that situation was we've made decisions that were not good decisions to get something we wanted, and again, we're going to have to make some. You're going to have to make some sacrifices to get there.
Yeah.
So the big deal is the same way we should have developed a plan on the front end. You've got to develop a plan to get out of it. And again, that's not one size fits all. It's a different. Depending on the family makeup, depending on what's going on. I mean, maybe I'm driving. What is the Amazon drivers? I don't know what they're called, but whatever. Maybe I make that route for 6 months or whatever to help pay this off to get it going. So it's a commitment. And again, I say most of the time you look at it, you look at people and they're either look at those credit. If you're paying credit card fees, that's the first thing you got to. I'm not anti-credit card, but if you're paying a fee on a credit card, you need to look at what you're doing, because you're going backwards.
Yeah, that's good. Because that was going to be my next question. Is how would you kind of rank some of that stuff, as far as if you do pick up the extra job, you start trying to pay off some debt to get yourself better aligned. What is some of that you would target? And you mentioned that.
Yeah, and again, the biggest thing is, again, you got, and I don't know because I still write checks. Well, my wife does a bunch of the online stuff, but most of the people, and that's one thing. Like for our givers at church, a lot of people just do the online giving. They set it up at the beginning of the year, and I love that because one, that helps you, us from a standpoint of you kind of know where you're at. But I also think those people need to stop every week and think about, why am I doing this? Why did He bless me with this? And I think we lose a little bit of that in that situation because people they do make a commitment to give it, but there's more than just giving it. It's like, why did I give it and why did I do it? But as far as making priorities of where to stop is credit cards. Obviously, if you got to learn, you got to change your spending habit.
Yeah.
Just getting rid of the credit card doesn't do it. You got to change your spending habit. Again, the first part of the budget to me, the way I say you have to budget is you take your expenses for the month, take the last 2 months, and write down everything and put them in that category. And it's going to stick out like a sore thumb where you're spending your money.
Yep.
And you're going to be surprised, like, with y'all, how many times do I go out to eat with y'all guys? I don't want to buy another $20 sandwich today, but go out to eat every day and see how much money you're spending.
We can't let Greg pick places.
Yeah, Greg, you're no longer picking where we're going to eat. Everybody's not financially stable like you. So
We don't have Bitcoin.
yeah.
I don't even want to talk about Bitcoin on here because I don't understand it and I never will.
Yeah, everybody just buy Bitcoin and we'll all be rich tomorrow. Talk to Greg about that, though. So again, if you got to learn to change your habit, and then you've got to be willing to make that sacrifice. Again, you're making a sacrifice in the short term to get to where you can go back to. And again, I'm not saying, hey, I don't know, if you're eating out 5 days a week, then maybe you eat out 1 day a week or whatever. I mean, again, just amazing how much but you're going to find out that I'm spending whatever. I'm buying, I don't even know what the games the kids play or whatever. I don't know how often you have to play them or whatever. But there's something that you're doing, you're spending, or you're going to find out that I'm making a $700 car payment.
Yeah.
I've got to make a decision. And again, it's not an easy decision, but it's a simple decision, but it's not an easy decision to see. So,
well, I want to go back to, you're talking about like the car payments and those sorts of things and thinking ahead. So like we're in the process of about to put child number 3 in a car. Like one of the things that we didn't think carefully about is the fact that insurance is going to go up every single time you had a kid. So an insurance payment that was very manageable a couple of years ago has all of a sudden just grown into this thing that is like a huge chunk every 6 months. And you gotta plan for that month that insurance payment's going to come due. Then on top of that, like we made a decision really early on. We're not having 5 car payments. That's an impossible thing for us to be able to manage.
Right.
Our kids are driving beaters. They're not great vehicles to begin with. They get the job done, but we had to be able to pay for those vehicles without taking on debt. And so, those are things that we had to think through that I wish somebody would have talked to me about sooner.
Sure. So
that we could kind of be more prepared for those situations than we were.
Well, and again, it comes back a lot to the same thing of, man, we baby our kids way too much, and we think they've got to have the latest, greatest of everything, and it's like, I can't let my kid drive up in a Ford Pinto.
That was a good one.
Car.
That's old school right there. I'm guessing some of our listeners won't even know what a Pinto is.
That's right.
Maybe. It's not a bean. Kelly. But, I think that is we as parents we are probably a worst example for them of what stewardship and budgeting should look like, because we want to make sure when they drive up, they've got just look at the cars in the parking lots at the schools. I mean, there's exceptions, but I mean, they do not have to have a brand new BMW with everything on it to survive.
Yeah.
The little car will get you there. And again, there's nothing wrong with that if you can afford it. But the honest truth of the matter is most of the people that are doing are struggling with their house payment, car payment, insurance payment. But I don't want you to know that I am. So the best thing for me to do is go get me a new car too, so that hey, me and the kids driving a new car.
Yeah.
Again, so. You just have to be careful. Again, not judging, because there's tons of people that make excellent money that can afford to do it, but a lot of people can, and we have done our kids a big injustice when we buy them a new car that we can't afford.
Yeah,
thinking through essentially inflation, because I think that's something. Of course, post COVID, we saw inflation hit hard, and that's what has amazed me through all this, and I'm on the early end where Maverick's still a few years away as far as having a vehicle and things like that, but I'm starting to try to start thinking through that now, so that way I'm not, getting there and figuring out, of course, what all that looks like. So starting to kind of think through it. But what amazes me, and it kind of shows our age, right? Because whenever I first started driving, of course, I bought my car, I had to work. That was the only way I was going to get a car, and so but I was able to get, a decent car at the time for $2,000, and it was a used car, had a lot of miles, but it was a good enough car, right? Mm-hmm. And now, just kind of, I'll look through Facebook Marketplace just to kind of see where stuff is now, and you're getting a true beater for $10,000,
right?
And it's how do you? And then you start comparing the used market to the new market, and then people are well, you might as well just get something new, because I could just spend a little bit more, and you start down that rabbit trail,
we
right?
Get to justify
That's right. That's right. And you start working down that rabbit hole, and so
we use that excuse because, again, I mean, are we really that concerned that little Janie is going to break down between here and Madison Central? That something's done? I mean, I understand when they get where they're traveling further distances or whatever, but it's not the end of the world if she has a flat tire between here and there. That's a life lesson. But we're oh no, she's got to have this with the AAA warranty and the whatever. Again, we just again have just pushed outside of our spending limits, and we justify it through all sorts of things. And again, we're the same way with scripture somewhere I'm not known, but it talks about investing is slow and steady plotting is the way to do it. I mean, it's not the get rich quick scheme. It is you work for it. You work through the finances for it. You invest by continually putting money into it. There's there's tons of things. You see it all the time though, that people from an investing standpoint, people who work somewhere and the company matches 5% and they're not putting anything in. I'm you just gave 5% away in essence, because you could just put it in the bank and you're earning. I said I can't do it because I don't have enough money here to do whatever. I'm well, go back to your budget because something's not right in there. Again, so and again, it is what you said there. You go to looking at stuff and you start justifying. Just make sure you're justifying. And I'm not saying I always do this because I'm as guilty as anybody, but never buy something on impulse. Stop, pray about it.
Yeah.
Wait a day, 2 days, or whatever before you buy something. It's like car dealers. That's why a car dealer wants you to come in their lot, because their sales go up well, I don't know. Now everybody buys online, so maybe it's a little different now. But it's just, even in that situation, it's just stop, wait, mull over it, consider it, and pray about it before you make any kind of big purchase. And again, then I just say, learn to be content with what we have. Like that is the biggest, I think, issue we all run into. I mean, it's the same way with no matter what we're in, whatever your passion is. Like planes. If you were buying a plane, you'd probably be happy with what you got today. But then when Michael drives in with his Z888 plane, you want a Z88, and you only had a Z81 or whatever it is. And it doesn't matter. It's always something in there, because a lot of times it's not a vehicle. Maybe it is cars. Maybe it's furnishings. Maybe it's clothes. Maybe it's whatever your passion is. It's easy just to push and covet what your neighbor has. Yeah. When you covet what your neighbor has, then I've made a decision to go and spend money on something that I shouldn't have been spending on, and it doesn't fit in. Again, if you got that in your budget, you probably can spend it. Maybe you say, like, I got $800 in here for this item, and that one is $950. Well, if that doesn't fit my budget, so it's planning, and that's not what we like to do.
Yeah. I only have one more question from a pastoral standpoint. So I think one of the things that's clear in the Bible, specifically in the New Testament, because the Old Testament we do talk about the tithe and like the giving toward the work that God is doing in the world, that sort of thing. The New Testament, one of the things that comes up quite a bit is it's not necessarily talking about a tithe, but it's talking about being able to live within your means so that you can be generous. Generosity is kind of like the thing that comes up over and over and over again when Paul talks about giving in 2 Corinthians. He talks about this idea of like being able to give with a heart that is full of gratitude and generosity. How can we move toward what we do as far as like the things that we're trying to do to accrue financial freedom and stability and that sort of thing? How does that turn outward? How do we get to that point to where it's now like, okay, I feel really good about giving toward this particular thing? Or we have a group that's about to go to Beautiful Feet. One of the things that happens every year when we go to Beautiful Feet in Fort Worth at Christmas time is we adopt families and buy presents for them. Like, how do you begin to move toward out of I'm doing this for me, and ultimately it's while I am taking care of myself, I'm able to do it in a way that now I can be generous toward others?
Yeah, well, I think it comes back to the very beginning of stepping into every situation, realizing that everything we have comes from God. Mm-hmm. Realizing that we have people who go to school to be doctors, they go to school to be engineers, whatever they are, mm-hmm. And we very quickly become I worked hard for this. I'm not taking away from that. You didn't work, you didn't study, but God gave you whatever that ability is. And from giving, as you read through Old Testament and through New Testament, He's always talking about you always give of your first fruits, whatever that is. And in the days they were, as they had cattle, as they had sheep or fruits or whatever their living was, they were taught first thing you do is you give that back. And I think in the same venue as you learn, you say we don't do it for ourselves, but I mean, how many times have you ever gone and given it Beautiful Feet, mm-hmm. or helped somebody else or done something that you don't end up feeling like
glad that you did it?
Yeah. I was more blessed than they mm-hmm. ever were. The same way, with your kids. I don't care if I get a Christmas present, but man, just the joy of seeing them open something. I think the joy comes from exercising that. Yeah. We've got to be pushed to exercise that of to me, like from a church standpoint, a lot of times, to me, we probably shouldn't hear about many church members needing something because their life group should have probably already taken care of them. Those life groups are giving back in those situations. To me, we should be hearing from people who are non-churched or not at the church to figure out, and then we mm-hmm. have an opportunity to help someone in those situations. But it's just exercise. I mean, it is a spiritual exercise to actually use that muscle to give away, and again, it will grow through the joy that you get from it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just I think that we all do not do a real good job of exercising that muscle,
Yeah.
and it's just become weak, and we need to stop and start again. We have to get our own house in order for us to be able to do that, because at the moment a lot of us don't have to give because we've already used it up for ourselves. And that's not the intent. The intent is not to build. We the truth of the matter is we can all look to, hey, I want to retire tomorrow. I'm like, I need to make sure I've got X in the bank or X in the market. Well, I hate to tell you, but that market doesn't necessarily mean anything. Just watch what can happen. So you better put your faith in something besides that market.
That's right.
And again, to me, the only way to do that is to start exercising the spirit of giving, and realizing. And again, we need to do a better job of communicating that and celebrating that when we see it happen. Many times, we have to be. You don't want to celebrate because you're not. You're almost like you're trying to put down somebody who you helped, or we want to make sure we don't make it about, oh, I helped.
Yeah.
Whatever, but sharing the joy that we get from being able to be there for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So I've kind of heard the idea. Of course, we want to get to a place to where we can give generously, to support, the work of God, reaching our community, all those kinds of things. To do that, we've got to start with a budget. Got to start there, figure out, again, when you work through that budget, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be easy. It means there's going to be some sacrifice. It means there's going to be some, maybe some figuring out, how to work through all that. But I think, all that's been very helpful. And so, to our listeners, I would encourage you guys, if you have any additional questions or need help working through a budget, again, we're blessed to have Tim on staff here who kind of gives you the opportunity to, come in, meet with him. If you're listening to the podcast, you're not local, send him an email, and he can kind of help you through that. And so, we believe that's kind of the first step. And we want to get to a place to where we are free to give generously, because we are called as followers of Christ to demonstrate that love of Christ to our community. And what better way to do that than to, give of our time, our resources, and steward everything well. And so that's kind of our encouragement to you. Hopefully, this kind of helps prompt some of those discussions and things within your household so you can kind of take those next steps. But always remember, there are better things ahead.
Thanks for joining us on Better Things Ahead. Follow the show on Spotify and Apple Podcast, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for the video of our podcast. Until next time, keep moving forward, because there are always better things ahead.